Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I do see all the VSERS reps are here. I know John was expected to be out, so we won't see him. No, given the weather this morning, I'm just gonna give it a couple more minutes here. Maybe see where we are at 9:02. Give people a little bit of flexibility this morning.
You guys getting a lot of snow or just rain and ice up there in Vermont? Or a little bit of everything? Good morning.
It's going to be a grab bag.
Is it? Yeah, we're getting, we had some sleet here in Northeast Pennsylvania. It's not just rain, just pure rain, and it's horrible. Just a messy day. Hang in there.
I've enjoyed the amount of time it's been snowing this winter. I will say, been nice.
You're not sick of shoveling yet?
No, not yet. Might get there.
I've hit that point already. I'm done with it.
I'll take the snow over the ice, though.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Amen. I think I used my snowblower once this year. I need more snow.
I'm with Chair Davis. I'm enjoying the snow.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Fortunate to have delegated.
We also have
to an 11 and a 13-year-old.
I was going to say kids. Oh yeah, kids are it.
Yeah.
If you want to go skiing, grab a shovel. That's my father used to say. I love it.
At least with like mowing the lawn, that's once a week. I mean, shoveling, you could be doing it multiple times a day. That's where it's like.
They need the exercise, Gillis.
I know.
They need the exercise. Let them do it. Builds character, as my dad used to say.
What happened to you, Gabe?
Exactly.
You didn't snow in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I bought a snowblower and I made money. That's what I did.
That's a good idea. So I did. We have had a couple more members join us. So I think waiting a couple minutes here was a good choice this morning with everything going on. I think I will call the meeting to order now. It is 9:03. I'm calling this month's meeting of the Vermont State Employees Retirement System Board to order. We do have a proposed agenda in front of us. I'm happy to take the board's take that under advisement if the board wishes.
I'll move approval of the agenda, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. The motion is approval of this month's agenda as presented. What's your pleasure? All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 All those opposed with a nay. And the ayes have it. So the agenda as presented is approved. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the January meeting that were in our board packet.
I'll move
what is the
approval,
board?
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jay.
I'll second.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve the minutes of last month's meeting with a second. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 And all those opposed with a nay. So the ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Next on our agenda is public comment. Are there any members of the public with us this morning that would like to offer comment? I'm just perusing our attendee list here. If you would please raise your hand. I'm not seeing any unfamiliar members that on our attendance screen this morning. So, and I don't see any hands. So, with that, I'm going to move on to our next item of business, which is a presentation from Empower of the quarterly results of the supplemental retirement plan. So, with that, I will pass it over to Gabe, I believe.
Thank you, Chairman Davis.
My pleasure.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year to all of you. It was wonderful just catching up with you. Commissioner Festige, I got to tell you, I love that background with the mountain. Bruce, none intended. I'd love yours too, but hers is just nicer. That's the background.
These are our official state branded, one of the official state branded.
I see that with the Vermont. That's absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. So good morning, everyone. So I see I got the Empower team here. We've got Chip and Gillis, and we've got Kristen and Melissa and Joe Fine. What I wanted to do, unless there's any objections, is just to cover the fourth quarter report with a couple of just high-level statistics and money in, money out kind of stuff. And then I was going to hand it over to Joe Fine to get into a conversation with respect to the investment review. It was a fourth quarter, strong year, but an ugly, my words, ugly fourth quarter. And then for some commentary there. And then if we have some time, I'd like Chip and Gillis to provide kind of just the field report, just to share with you what participant activity looks like. But before I move forward, are there any questions? Is there anything specifically that you want to make sure that we address here today before I move into this? Okay, thank you for that. Having said that, I'm going to pop into my report here and share the State of Vermont Deferred Compensation Plan. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Chip. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, as of the fourth quarter, the executive summary, there's someone in the lobby here, but I'll let them do that. As of the fourth quarter, total plan assets for the 457 plan, as you can see, are $732.3 million, representing 9,281 accounts. Something new that I'd like to point out here, and that Tim brought up to my attention the other day. When you look at this plan level asset line,
Gabe, I'm sorry to interrupt. If we could just have the phone call person just let us know who that is, the number ending 1811.
Absolutely.
Did someone just join by phone number 1811? Okay, well, I guess someone did, but we'll move forward from now.
Okay, Tim, thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So as of 12/31, as I said, $732.3 million here in the plan, representing just under 9,381 accounts. Just fast forward to yesterday, as of close of business yesterday, just for reference, plan assets are $752.5 million. So we picked up another $20 million so far year to date in terms of valuation. I wanted to point out one section here where you see these plan level assets, this $415,000, excuse me. That money represents your plan expense account. And that's the money that when we collect all the revenues gets put into your account, Empower's fees get paid. And that's what's in the account at any point in time. And that money is what the state gets to use to do any of its fiduciary services, oversight, et cetera, so forth. So that is what's called your plan level plan expense account.
And just to put some point on that, we had talked a little bit ago about doing an RFP for a fiduciary advisor. We are in the final stages of that and expect to be updating the board on that one next meeting.
But those would be where the fees are paid to advisors, et cetera, to Tim's point. So just for your reference. Thank you, Tim. In terms of executive summary, so your average account balance is just under $79,000. And as you can see, from the benchmark there, then we're going to take a quick look at your investment strategy utilization, how people are investing their money. And then when we look at all the different funds in the plan, as you can see, the largest holdings in the portfolio have to be large cap funds. Almost 35% of the total assets are in that fund. Let's look at a little cash flow for the year. As you can see here, it's broken down quarter by quarter. As you can see back in January of 24, when the plan migrated over from the Prudential platform, $675 million. Today, we're at $732 million. So when we look at the entire year, plan has grown about 8.5%, from 675 million to 732 million as of December 31st. For the entire year, there was $32 million in contributions into the plan, 51 million in distributions, and we'll look at distributions in a minute, resulting in a net negative cash flow for the year of $18.8 million. Now, these are big numbers, but I will tell you, given the size of this plan as compared to other plans, it is a mature plan, and this is what you expect to see, right? 457s are voluntary contributions for the most part, and when people do retire, they take their money, whether it be in installments or rollovers, et cetera. So it is their money to do as they please at the time of retirement. But there are quite a few people that still do work in the plan, and we'll get into the distributions in a section. There was another person waiting into the lobby. Okay. In terms of the contributions that came into the plan over the course of the year, as you can see, of the $32 million that came in, 22.4 million of that was deferred deferrals, regular deferrals. Another 5.5 million was Roth contributions, and the other category are rollovers into the plan. These are individuals that had 457 or assets outside of the state of Vermont and rolled it into their deferred compensation plan here. And again, we break it down month by month, and we look at the rolling year period. So it looks like contributions are in the $2 million range. Just doing a quick eyeball there. Run rate. So we get about contributions about $2 million a month. And then there's different activities, the number of transactions by month for individuals. In terms of distribution, so we saw money coming in. Now let's look at money going out. As we said, there were $51 million in total distributions over the course of the year. 41 million of those represents separation of service. These are individuals that retire and either do one of two things, either set up an installment payments, monthly payments, quarterly payments, semi-annual, or people that just have said, you know what, just give me all my money, I'm taking it, I'm leaving, I'm moving. We had a lot of that during just after COVID, as I've been reporting, but that was predominantly the amount of the money that went out of the plan. There were 542 transactions for required minimum distributions. Remember, if those of you know that if you're still working or when you leave the plan and you're over 70 and a half and rules are changing to 72, 73, you have to take out a required minimum distribution every year based on your life expectancy. There were some in-service distributions, right? People that are still working, that are over the age of 70, that can take, in-service distributions. So there were 32 of those: hardships, credits, Secure Act, Quadro, and sadly, $3 million, representing about 146 transactions for individuals that have passed and moved on. So there's your distributions across the board, broken down by segment, and looking at a run rate of about, $3-4 million across the board. So money coming in, money going out, and account balances. Now let's look at kind of how people are investing their money, what they're doing and how they're doing it. There's a question. Yes. Hi, Jay. Good morning. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Gabe. On the previous slide, the
Yes,
November distributions, that large yellow-orange segment, what happened there? Why is it so different from any other month?
Well, that's the required minimum distribution, Jay, and that's what we paid out for the year. Yep.
Okay.
Great question.
Thank you.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for the question. So in terms of the assets and how people are engaging in the plan, so it's broken down, as you said, by those that, do it for me, help me do it, or I'll do it all by myself. The majority of the assets, the majority of the participants utilize what's called a do it on your own strategy. They create their own asset allocation strategy. Pretty common in the public sector space. There's a target date strategy, 22.5%, or 2,000 participants. And by the way, the corresponding assets are to the right. So of the 2,084 participants utilizing a target date only strategy, that represents $75 million. The asset allocation strategy is the GoalMaker asset allocation tool. So there's 2,600, or almost 30% of those 2,700 participants. That represents $127 million. But the bulk of it is the 4,000 people that do their own, representing, $500 million. And then there are individuals that, utilize personal advice and managed accounts and things of that nature. There's 363 participants representing 21 million. And the 28 online advice, remember, Empower utilizes, or offers, I should say, free point-in-time online advice. So there are 28 individuals that utilize that, which represents about $3 million. So this is a good diverse mix of individuals and what they're doing. And most experts will tell you that target date strategies, asset allocation strategies are the masses. And you're offering them those types of products or services to help them diversify based on their risk tolerance, time horizon, et cetera. So that's the utilization breakdown of the investments. And then you can see here, we also break it down by active participants that are still in the plan, actively contributing, those that are separated from service. So what this tells you here is when you look at all of the $275 million, these are people that have separated from service, but yet they're still engaged. They still have money in the plan. So they're keeping it in the plan. They're utilizing the plan for their benefits. The only difference is they can't contribute to it. So as you can see there's a healthy portion of individuals that still keep money in the plan for future planning, et cetera. Advisory services, again, these are individuals that say the 3% of participants that have 21 million. There are 363 individuals that say, hey, I want help, do it for me. Personal one-on-one financial advice. And that is a paid service that they utilize. And then some demographic data under all of those high levels. So how many people, age group, that are using those services, whether they're using managed accounts, average account balances, et cetera, so forth by age group. A breakdown of Goalmaker. Goalmaker has, as I said, 2,700, 127 million. So you have almost a 30% participation in that, and the Goalmaker assets are 17% of the total. So there's activity, again, demographics, age group, balances of individuals in Goalmaker. Excuse me. And then here on page 2021 is just a breakdown of all your funds and which are the funds that are in Goalmaker. They're here on the left, and versus the non-Goalmaker funds, and just as a comparison on what how participants are using the Goalmaker funds, which are part of the overall program. So 127 of the 605 for a total of the 732. Then there's, again, asset allocation by funds. If you want a snapshot of your entire plan, these are all the funds in your plan. These are the balances, the number of participants in those funds. So if you're in a target date fund or if you're in Goalmaker fund, that's these bigger numbers, and the total over a 2-page scenario here. So this is all of your funds broken down as a percentage of the total by fund. Just transfer activity with rebalancing, some additional insights. Again, just some statistics for your reading pleasure. Age group, demographic data, etc. Now, before I go to Joe real quickly on the investments, I'd just like to clear the single deposit investment account. As a reminder, someone has a question.
Yeah, Bruce.
Yes, but before you move on, I had a question
Sure.
about slide 17, where some of the information is presented by different genders, male, female, and non-binary. And I just want to verify, is that the same order that you presented in the footnote? Is it female, male, non-binary? Is that the order of those slash marks?
Yes. So how people identify when they create their account, it's those 3 categories, and that is exactly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that helped. You're very welcome, Bruce. Thank you. Any other questions before I get into the self-directed brokerage account? Excuse me, the single deposit investment account. As a reminder, this is an older plan that's sort of a wasting trust, right? So there's money just leaving the plan every year. And as of December 31st, $21.7 million was in this fund, representing the 722 accounts. And again, no contributions in the plan. It has a run rate of about $2 million a year as individuals continue to get older and take the money out. You can see quarter over quarter. So that's the bottom line in terms of the various distributions coming out of that account. Again, a continued wasting trust with 27 million. I remember when this was, I think, in the 40s at one point. Remember, Tim? So it's doing exactly as has been expected for the individuals that have this account.
I think at a certain point, it's worth having a conversation about what options are for this plan as it gets to a certain level of assets. I'm not sure if we're there yet, but just that it's something that we have on the horizon. Probably will be discussing with our fiduciary advisors when we bring them on.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, before I turn it over to Joe Fine, are there any questions that I can answer? Otherwise, we're going to just transition right into the investment portion here. And I will stop sharing. Joseph, you're up, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Get my presentation up to share. Can everyone see my screen now? Is the heading macroeconomic summary?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So we're going to get off this page quickly. As the last set of bullets describe, the Fed has become much more focused on inflation, and the outlook is for uh, interest rate cuts to be less aggressive this year. The Fed's going to be less aggressive this year than previously hoped. And you're probably aware that there was a hot inflation report yesterday. So markets rebounded from their lows, but not a good start in terms of inflation expectations for the year. I am now turning to slide number 6, as Gabe spoke about. If you hone in on that first column, quarter to date, was a very mixed bag in terms of equity returns. And this will be important speaking to a couple of your investment options. Want to point to the Russell 1000 growth and the Russell mid-cap growth being the outliers, very strong performers for the quarter, whereas the rest of the returns, in particular international returns, middling to negative. However, as Gabe also pointed out, was a strong 2024 for equities. So you can see S&P was up 25%, growth up a lot more than value, but double-digit returns nevertheless across mid-cap, small-cap, and even international returns were okay in single digits, but positive. Also want to point to 2022 being an outlier for Russell 1000 growth. We're going to talk about that later with respect to one of your funds as well. So outside of 2022, Russell 1000 growth, large growth stocks have been leading the way for many years. More on that in a couple of minutes. Page 7, fixed income returns. You could see a lot of volatility here across the page, whether we're looking at the quarter, right? Again, inflation expectations, interest rates are going to rise, so bond returns are going to be negative. Although for the broad U.S. Bond market for the year, eked out a small positive gain. But 3-year trailing, 5-year trailing, you can look far to the right to see 22, 21. 2022 was the worst year for bonds in a generation. So a lot of volatility in the financial markets and with fixed income returns in particular. Okay, I'm jumping ahead to page 13. This is, the key exhibit in explaining a couple of the funds that have either underperformed in the intermediate term or shorter term. Russell 1000 growth, Russell mid-cap growth. I mentioned these going back to slide 6, and the unprecedented levels of market concentration that we're seeing. Right, so it's really a very narrowly led market in these two segments in particular. So, you've got to be in the so-called Magnificent Seven to have strong returns. Make sense? Okay, I'm going to jump ahead to page 31, but I want to remind everyone that the returns for all the options are summarized on pages 29 to 32. So as we typically do, we stop and pause on the quote unquote underperformers or funds that have challenges in certain time frames, but the overwhelming thing to take away here is that your investment options are performing extremely well. You've got a broad, diverse lineup, and most of the options are performing well. Pages 29, 30, and we're going to stop and pause on page 31. I did want to stop and pause, as we have typically done, on page 32 for a second, that Lazard Emerging Markets Equity Fund. I'll blow this up a bit. You may recall that we were looking at this for a long time and was not performing well, but those 5-year, 3-year ranks have really come around, and the fund continues to do pretty well. And that would also be the case for the month of January. I'm sorry, for the year-to-date period. So really a month and a half. The Lazard fund is back near the top of its peer group, up over 6% year-to-date through yesterday, near the top of its peer group. So not a great fourth quarter, but a solid year and a solid start to this year. Back to 31. Vanguard, and there's commentary on the two funds we're going to speak to on page 34, but easy to get the point across from here. Vanguard US Growth, 1-year rank 37th percentile. That's that number next to the slash for the fund return for the year-to-date or 1 year. You could see the 3-year return is where the issue is, and that goes back to 2022 when this fund underperformed. And I showed you, large growth underperforming. This fund struggled there. So the 5-year rank is literally just below the peer median, right? 1565 versus 1575. So technically, looking at our fund performance metrics, this fund would not meet 3 or 5-year performance criteria, but no issues. Strong 2023, strong 2024. Also a very strong start to the year, up over 5% through yesterday, year to date. Would rank in the top 20% of its peer group. So
Joe, there's a question. Joe, question from Eric.
Could I just stop you there? I just I just want to dig into maybe that strategy a little bit. I'm going to assume that it's maybe a little bit less concentrated to the Magnificent Seven and a little more diversified, or I don't know if you could speak to the strategy.
Sure. Why don't we turn to page 50? If you're following along on your own, we can see that there is a significant exposure to the Magnificent Seven, but this would be below what the benchmark weights would be for those stocks. But it is still heavily concentrated, which is why the fund was able to perform well in 2024, but not quite as strong as the benchmark.
That explains it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. So, well, since we're here, we'll speak to the other fund from the detail page, which is the Impacts Global Environmental Markets. So this is the exact opposite story of Vanguard US Growth, or one of the big reasons why we've showed you that exhibit on page 13. So this is a fund that had a decent third quarter as market breadth improved, but with market concentration narrowing again in the fourth quarter, they are not in any way, shape, or form exposed to, the Magnificent Seven, except for, I mean, Microsoft is the only, large technology name that's in the top 10. You could see that here, the bottom left. So the fund underperformed by a wide margin in the fourth quarter and for the year to date. So that is the story here. The management of the fund is looking for, markets to be more diversified. They have had a decent start to the year, up 3.8%, not in the top half of the peer group, but closer to where the peer group is. And the bottom line is, if you look at the calendar year returns here, they're pretty consistent outside of 2024. Fund underperformed a bit in 23 and 22, but you could see pretty good returns going all the way back to 2016, with 2018 being the exception. So again, don't want to leave on a sour note. We just spoke to 2 funds out of 25 to 30 funds. So your funds are doing well, and the Vanguard US Growth obviously doesn't have major issues, is doing what it's supposed to do, and the for this Impacts Global offering, it's very explainable as well what's going on there. So I have stopped sharing. I didn't take too much time. Apologies if I did. And unless there are other questions. Okay, Eric, yes?
Thank you, Joe. I just on the PAX Global, it's this one almost kind of reminds me of the Lazard a little bit, in that it seems like a strategy that's just not in favor under the current market conditions. It's not really it's not an issue with executing its strategy. You wouldn't expect every strategy to be doing well and through every market time. So it seems pretty, as you said, explainable. It seems natural that this strategy is just underperforming a bit now, but it speaks to a diversified investment lineup as well.
Absolutely, very well said.
You're hired, Eric. Are there any other questions, investment-related questions? Just in the spirit of keeping things moving. Thank you. Okay. Chip, bring us home, bud. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a question?
Yeah,
Hi, Jay.
I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But on that last one, that you didn't say these words, but I'm hearing that this fund is not one that it's one that we're paying attention to, but it's not one that we expect to see any near-term action on.
Well, that's up to the board and staff behind the scenes. As Tim said, a fiduciary advisor is being hired, so I would defer to everyone here to make decisions on that.
Yeah, thanks. That's something that when we had RBK look at that, I don't think there was an action recommendation at the time. And so part of the point of the RFP we're engaged in right now is to make sure we do that on a periodic basis. And I think we're going to really want to kind of first take their temperature on the lineup, whether anything's changed from when they looked at it last time. And then we can, with that, tool, we can have the conversation at the board level.
Great, thank you.
Apologies, Gabe and Chairman Davis. I did forget to mention 2 things related to 2 of the Vanguard offerings that are reducing their expense ratio. So I just want to get that on the record. The Vanguard Developed Markets Index Fund The expense ratio is moving from 6 basis points to 3, so it's literally being cut in half. And the Vanguard Total Bond Market Index is going from 3.5 basis points to 2.5.
Thank you. That's certainly good news.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Any other questions? Thank you, Joe, for that reminder. I should have wrote it down as well, and I did not. Chip, take us home, bud.
Absolutely. I know we're running a little over on time, so I'll be very brief. A very normal fourth quarter. We deal with a lot of RMDs. As you saw, the November RMD numbers were up. We're helping a lot of people with that. A lot of people retired January 1st. We spent a lot of time talking to people about preparing for retirement and what does that mean and how to access their account and things like that. Purchases of service credit. I don't know if people noticed there was over $1 million in service credit purchases just out of deferred comp this year. It's a great tool for that. Glad to see people taking advantage of it. We're also reaching out, doing a lot more. We talked about this last time that we're looking at doing this. We did move forward with a lot more face-to-face, a lot more on-site, boots on the ground. It's different than it was pre-COVID. There aren't as many people in a lot of these locations. Certainly seeing a lot of municipalities. I've spent a lot of time in Bennington. I know Gillis has been in Springfield and Windsor County Sheriff's Department and several other places, as well as state locations. But it's nice to be able to get out there. Definitely finding, there's certain places where there are a lot of state employees, state police barracks, VTrans offices, things like that, prisons. Which leads me to we're also still doing a lot of presentations. Very fortunate to be able to team up with the retirement office. We're doing the pre-retirement seminars with them virtually. With human resources, Gillis and Sophie, I think it was Gillis, just put together a presentation in addition to the normal webinars that we do. The Department of Corrections, the state police, when they're hiring people and they have their school. So we're getting out, we're getting to a lot of different people, either virtually or face-to-face, and going very well. And I have a great job where yesterday I was talking to a 20-something-year-old about changing the way his future is going to be, helping somebody get enrolled. It's a wonderful thing. And those poor people have to listen to me talk about what a big deal it is that they're smart enough to be here doing that. But I do that hoping that it helps them stick to this and understand the real value of it moving forward, to today being able to be here with you guys. So it's a good situation. Thank you very much. Is there any questions on what we're doing here locally?
Hey, Chip, I just want to say, from the retirement division's perspective, we greatly appreciate the partnership. I know I speak for Dawn, excuse me, and her team. The more that we can coordinate when we're getting out from our side to have you guys there with us, I think the better it is for the member experience. So thanks for being so readily available.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we love it. We love, Don's been fantastic, of course. And we love those opportunities. Like you said, I think that sometimes we draw people, they draw people. It's a good way, and we get a lot more message out to them when we work together. So yeah, we're all in on that. Anything they ever want to do, we are a yes. Great. Thank you. Any questions? I'll turn it back to you, Gabe.
Thank you. Thank you. So what's not changed, folks, just so you know, what has not changed is our continuous relentless on helping all employees and retirees achieve better outcomes. That's the focus, continues to be the focus. The more we network, the more we do together, the more people get engaged. There's a lot of great services coming down from Empower later on this year, some enhancements to the website. All of this is designed to help participants make it easier for them to engage and take action and save for their future. So on behalf of the entire Empower team here, they're all here, and I know, I'm sorry, not everyone got to speak, but thank you for the opportunity to serve you as a board, more importantly, to serve your participants and your retirees. We really appreciate the business, and thank you, and be well, and hopefully we'll see each other soon.
Well, thank you to the whole Empower team. It's clear, all of the service that our participants get It's always nice to hear how the plan's doing, how the investments are doing. I love to hear how the interaction with the participants is going too, and it's just really great to hear. So really, thank you for your continued work on behalf of all the participants.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful rest of your meetings, and to all of you, don't forget Valentine's Day. Take care of your loved ones, right? Don't forget. I got reminded by my daughter, so passing it on. All the best to you. Jay knows what I'm talking about. All the best to all of you. Be well, everybody. Take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. See you.
Take care.
Bye.
So with that, I think that concludes the Empower presentation, and the next item on our agenda is the actuarial risk assessment, and what's included in that document is sort of bringing back some of the scenarios that will be included in the risk assessment. Tim, I assume since you worked on developing this, you'll give an overview.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, awesome.
So what we have here is a memo from Matt and team over at Siegel, just to put some context out there and remind the board where we are on this. We're moving forward with our risk assessment for all the systems, and the team at Siegel is hard at work at putting the baseline together and running the stochastic modeling. Jay, I think it was your comment in particular that had us really kind of think a little bit more specifically about the deterministic scenarios and want to bring them back to you before we kind of move down that side of it. And really, the takeaway that I heard there, which is a good one, is don't have them all skewed in one direction, because if you start from the unremarkable premise of what happens if everything is bad, then the likely outcome is, well, everything's bad. So what we wanted, and it doesn't really give you as good a sense of the range of potential expectations if you only skew in one direction. So what we did was have Matt and team look at, I asked them to go talk to their peers in Siegel and look at their other clients and sort of see what are the typical things that folks find value in looking at performing these risk assessments. And so you really kind of, as in my mind, as I understand it, there's kind of two buckets. There's the investment side of the coin, and then there's the demographic side of the coin. And so what we thought would make sense was to kind of stress or put together some scenarios where we took a couple investment related scenarios and looked at what happens with prolonged performance that's north or south of our expectation, and what happens if we kind of shock the system with particularly good or particularly bad. Again, making sure that we do it equally in both directions so as to get the best picture of the range of potential outcomes. So that's what you have in the scenarios 2 and 3, and those kind of fall in the range of what other systems typically look at, as Matt explains it to me. The 4 and 5 are the demographic side of the coins. And so that's where you look at what happens if if workforce numbers go up or down. Honestly, given all the reason why it's a little different in the teacher system, as you'll see, than the others is just, as we all know, there's a huge conversation going on right now about education in Vermont. So we thought it made sense to be a little bit more aggressive in how we look at assumptions there. And then, life expectancy is the other one. What happens if, on the one hand, we get substantial gains in life expectancy due to, new treatments, pharmaceuticals, what have you, or, vice versa. What happens if we see another pandemic or some other thing that causes a degradation in life expectancy? Those, as I was talking to Matt, seem to capture I guess I'd say, sort of most likely, most important things that we could look at, while also not getting I didn't want to go too far down this road. Each one of these costs money. So we wanted to try and be judicious in how we did this, provide value to the board. Something we did in the last risk assessment was try to mimic, certain periods in history, like stagflation in the 70s or the dot-com bubble. And in thinking about that, that seemed more interesting than useful. Things aren't going to reappear in the same way, as we all know. So if we just, it seemed like if we kind of use these sort of base level stressors on the system, I think that will help us see where our range is and where, perhaps particular focus might need to be. That's what you have here in this memo. And our plan is to move forward with this, but wanted to bring it to you before doing so, to have that check-in that Jay had asked for. Happy to take any questions.
Tim, this is more of a comment than a question, but I just, I appreciated really two different elements about this document. One is I like how you first had Matt generate a list of kind of all of the potential things to look at from experience with other retirement systems, and then kind of drill down in, okay, what makes sense for VSERS in this case, but the Vermont systems. I like that delineation, and then I really appreciate how you took the comments from the board and the way I see the scenarios that we went with. It really provides that kind of range of outcomes that I think is important for risk assessment. You want, as we see through the actuarial evaluation, there's variance. So understanding what that variance might look like over time, but in sort of reasonable bounds, whether it's short-term overperformance or short-term underperformance or a big shock, in both directions. I thought the scenarios that you landed on, distilling down from that first list, it made a lot of sense to me. I don't know if other folks had any additional comments, but I really appreciated the update. I see Jay, please. You're muted.
You're muted, Jay.
Jay, you're muted.
There we go. So this is exactly what I was hoping you would do, and I really like the way that you've gone through this very thoughtfully. The range of options. I mean, you could spend a lot of time and money looking at scenarios, and you've narrowed it down to something that looks very sensible to me. I just really appreciate the thoughtfulness and sharing all of this with the board. So thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Chair, if there are no other comments, maybe I could just also kind of steal some thunder from later on in the meeting in the sort of proposed May agenda, but just so folks know what to expect. Our goal would be for a May in-person meeting to have the Siegel team come on out and present this work. It seems like the right time to do it, and gives them sufficient time. So that's where you can put it on the back burner for a couple months at the board level and come back to it in May.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. I had lost my cursor on another screen for a minute, so thanks for jumping in there. So looks like there's no further discussion on that topic. Next up on the agenda is disability recommendation for Norman McCart, and as we typically weigh whether there's a need for executive session. My own review did not indicate I'm not going to move, but I don't know. I don't know if there's other material, other things I'm not privy to that may be worthy of an executive session. So, you know, open whatever the board desires on that. And Bruce, I see your hand is raised. The floor is yours.
Yep. I move to accept the Medical Review Board's recommendation for Norman McCart.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor and a second. Any additional discussion on the motion? The motion is to approve the Medical Review Board's recommendation related to Norman McCart. Not seeing any hands raised. All those in favor, please signify with an eye.
Aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed with a nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The Medical Review Board's recommendation is approved. Next on our agenda are a list of miscellaneous items. There's also several items in our packet related to these items. Tim already handled one of them. First up is pending legislation. And Tim, maybe you wanted to speak to that if
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we are continuing to monitor what is going on at the State House this year. We don't have, we're not advancing any specific legislation particular to VSERS this year, other than, budgets and ADEX and things of that nature. But the one thing that I wanted to put on the board's radar and say that we are working on it right now to try and figure out a path forward. In the Budget Adjustment Act, that's the act every year that adjusts the current fiscal year budget. There's a provision that amends what we refer to as the waterfall language in the state budget. At the end of the year, if there's excess funds, then they are directed to certain areas. 25% of those excess funds go to the state retirement fund, and 25% go to a specific account in the teacher's retirement fund. Last year, each of those funds received $8.9 million pursuant to this waterfall language. But in any given year, it could receive none. There's plenty of years where we don't have extra funds available. But that language was put in as part of the Act 114 agreement in that legislation. There's some language in this year's waterfall that notwithstands the waterfall language for the current fiscal year and sort of reserves the any excess receipts to future use. So we flagged the issue for Senator Probst and the administration, and we are engaged with Adam and his office to see, if there's a way that that can be approached in a little bit different manner that preserves the general language from the Act 114 agreement. That is very much ongoing right now, so I don't have much more of an update on that at this point. But that's the sort of one issue that is sort of popping right now. I don't know that I've seen every so often there are some different retirement related proposals that come out there. When I reviewed last week, I hadn't seen anything, have not had a chance to do it this week. It's always possible that something comes out and we monitor it here in the office. If you guys are hearing anything, always happy to hear from you as well.
Beth T.
Just a quick question. Do you have any sense about why this language was put in the Budget Adjustment Act?
I think it was a tool to reserve, I think revenues are coming in pretty strong this year, and there's a desire in the language it says to be used next year for things like housing and property tax relief, which is, not inappropriate to reserve money to future use. I mean, you generally want to use the money that comes in the fiscal year, and you don't want money going to the waterfall. Let me put it that way. You try to appropriate or reserve everything in a fiscal year. So I think this was a tool to do that. I don't know exactly, why this tool, but that's kind of what we're trying to figure out right now and see if there's a path forward that can work for everyone. I know the unions, the teachers and the state union are aware and engaged on the issue. And as I mentioned, Senator Probst, who currently has the bill, is also very much aware of it.
Bruce, please.
Thanks. So I have a question about the waterfall and then a second comment. My question is, I get the sense that the new language kind of puts the additional funds into the retirement system at risk, which is different than previous years, but I'm having a hard time grasping what is actually different in this new legislation. Is it that priorities have changed at the State House and what was approved?
So I don't think it's I don't get that sense that it's that priorities have changed. As I said before, there's no guarantee that there will ever be excess funds available at the end of the year. And I think it's both the administration's and the legislature's goal to generally speak for all of the funds that are coming in. I think last year, the way they did that was with a series of contingent appropriations that would say, if available, 5 million to this, and if still available, another 2 million to that. That's the tool that they used. I think this year, rather than making that list of contingent appropriations, I think they used a different tool to kind of do the same thing by just saying, all this, anything extra goes to the next fiscal year for, whatever purpose. I'm not sure. I actually don't even know if there's an intent to undo the waterfall deal, to be honest. My sense in looking at it was perhaps just a way to achieve the reservation of funds into the next year. But so we just wanted to make sure that folks were aware that it did have a potential impact, even though funds aren't guaranteed to come from this language. It was one of the components of Act 114. So we raised our hands and called the question. And honestly, we've just started doing that. So we're kind of working to understand more. I wish I had a better sort of where we are, but I haven't kind of had a full touch point with everybody to understand that.
Thanks, Tim.
Tim, I just wanted to follow up Bruce's question because I think it's worth teasing this apart a little bit. There's in Act 114, there's two avenues for payments above the ADEC to be made to the funds. One is that plus payment, which is different than the waterfall language we're talking about. I just wanted to make that point, at least as I understand it. And then the waterfall language was about if there are funds, excess funds before money is transferred to the rainy day reserve funds, 25% would go to the teacher system and 25% to the state employee system. It's that specific element that we're talking about here.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. And actually, it's a good point to flag it like that. You'll see another one of the items in the sort of miscellaneous bucket that we just wanted to get in front of you was a report that we generated to articulate the savings. This is a report that sort of describes the methodology that we utilized when Mike had his press conference last month to announce what the savings are projected to be from Act 114. We don't count on the waterfall for any, because in any given year, there's no guarantee of any funding whatsoever from that provision. It is really only those circumstances where revenues are coming in hotter than expected, and there is some excess at the end of the year that can be diverted in the way the waterfall language specifies. So to your point, Eric, the plus payments, the one-time payments, that is what we look to articulate the savings. And I think the waterfall language was then and is now kind of looked at as sort of extra if it's there.
Bruce, you have another question if the floor is yours.
Yep. I appreciate that further explanation. I think I would call it the plus payment.
There you go.
Differentiate. My second thing is a question, more of a comment for, I guess, the retirement division's awareness. I'm aware that some VSCA members have advocated for additional retirement service grants for military members. So that's something our legislative team has been trying to formulate as a proposal for the legislative folks that they work at through VSEA. It would be similar to the service credit grants that are available to Vietnam veterans specifically. So this would be for additional military conflicts that have happened since Vietnam, and providing a grant instead of purchasing a credit like some after 15 years of service. So that's something that's been discussed within VSCA for about 2 years now, and reached priority list for this legislative session. But the details, I don't think have been really flushed out yet, and how that would impact the retirement system for those types of veterans that are state employees.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bruce. And we're aware and have talked with union representatives over the past couple of years. I think the first step so first, I too haven't seen any language this year. I think from conversations with folks in the union, our first step would be to try and study that issue, to work with human resources to get a better understanding of how many veterans we have in service, and then work with our actuaries to get a sense of, okay, if we were to assume X amount of service for Y amount of active members, what would that represent in cost and liability to the system? I think there's an acknowledgement with union representatives that to the extent that question is to move forward, it would start with a study. So then this board and everybody could be aware of potential costs associated with it. And then, it would go to the legislature for a conversation.
Beth F.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, since Tim called out HR and some of the data. I would say that veteran status is a voluntary element in our system. So we don't have, I think that our data that we do have is pretty underrepresented. The one thing that we do know is people who have taken current people who take military leave. But other than that, that's the only data that we could say we would have with any certain accuracy, because, if it's not something that you went in and declared at some point, then we wouldn't know. So to try to get those numbers accurate, there would need to be work. There would need to be advocacy work, I think, on DHRs as well as our union partners, to try to get people to do some type of a self-declaration. So I think that would be part of the study. I don't think it would need to be named in the study, but it's just a time element, that some data that would need, and a time to plan how we would do that prior to. And I don't think it's something that would be costly. It's just how we would capture enough information to that the actuaries would need to make the determination what kind of method they would say, since we know our data is not definitely would underrepresent that population.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I've been in touch with Harold from your team, and that's very consistent with everything we've discussed along those lines. costs come probably less on the internal side and more on the actuarial side, when we would need to take whatever we find there and then turn it into potential liabilities.
And I also don't know how that, you know, as far as a recruitment tool could be a great recruitment tool. So that number, and I don't know if the actuaries would be able to make any other other determinations based on that. They can really generally only work on facts, but I don't know, you know, if that would help us recruit perhaps retired military to come work for the state, which, you know, we do try to attract. You know, we're very interested in anybody with experience coming to apply for jobs here.
Well, from initial conversations with them, I think what we would do is, you know, we would try to get as good, you know, a representation of the current workforce as possible, recognizing the limitations that we have. But we would also, they would then turn that into some kind of ongoing assumption of, you know, X number of new state employees would come in, and then we would all have a conversation about, okay, well, probably doesn't make sense to give it on day one. I think the current requirement is it's either 5 or 10 years of state service when you become eligible for that credit. Again, the idea being to promote longevity and utilize it as a recruitment and retention tool. So those would all be the conversations that we have, I think, with our union partners, DHR, everybody, if a study is moves forward this session to try and characterize it. But that's how we think about it, Bruce, here. Our sort of contribution to the discussion would be to try and provide that cost figure so that everyone would go into it eyes wide open.
Well, thanks, Tim, for your update, and Bruce for bringing that issue to board's attention as well. Appreciate that. So anything else on pending legislation?
Not for me.
Okay. That was a good discussion. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the new open meeting requirements. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mr.
Gavin,
Chair.
please. Please.
I meant to just mention, because I had mentioned it before, you know, that we had a hiring process that was quite competitive for our office-wide director of risk management. And we do have someone starting in that position who we're quite excited about in about 3 weeks. So I think I mentioned before, you know, she will have some duties that are office-wide, some duties that are specific to retirement, some that are specific to unclaimed property, but really looking forward to having that added capacity, and yeah, excited about it. So thank you.
Hopefully we can meet her at a future board meeting. Congratulations. That's great. Great news. It looks like the next item on the agenda is the new open meeting requirements memo. This was in our board packet. Justin, did you want to speak to this at all? I'm assuming
yeah, our assumption was on this. I think we can answer some, and why I kind of organized it in miscellaneous items is I don't think we necessarily have presentations on these items. It's sort of, a lot of these are more we like to do for awareness, but happy to answer any questions on any of them, of course. Justin, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but I think our goal is mostly just to kind of put it in and just have it there as a resource for you.
Fair enough. Thank you. Any questions on the memo? Not seeing any. There's a board membership memo also included in our packet. I assume that sort of fits into the same general bucket of, you know, making sure it's there for everyone's awareness. The May in-person meeting also, outlining that. And Tim already spoke to that to some degree.
Yeah, the one other thing, or sorry, on that one.
No, please.
I would just make a comment that, you know, we are sort of proposing to tweak the days a little bit. As I've been thinking about this, a longer meeting, a 3-hour meeting, if we're in person, that's actually going to go pretty quick. I'm assuming, about an hour. That might be Siegel presenting the risk assessment. I would like to have, I'm kind of thinking it in the vein of let's meet the vendors, since everyone will be back, and I don't want to pack it too much, because I do want to provide opportunity for board members, to also chat and have a little bit of time to do that offline. So just to note our proposed timeline that we're working, if this all looks good, we're going to start moving to lock all this down with our vendors, get them to arrange for travel. And so that's the purpose of putting this here. It's more to just further the conversation, make sure there's general awareness. Of course, we'll have a hybrid opportunity for those that can't make it. But figured this was a good one to try and really make an effort to get to.
Thank you for really putting a lot of thought into how to make this meeting as productive as possible. Really appreciate it. Any comments on the May meeting memo? Not seeing any. The last item on our miscellaneous list, but I would say certainly not least, is the Act 114 savings report. This came up as a topic of conversation at the last meeting, and since that time, the office has formalized this memo. I enjoyed reading it and seeing all the detail and the calculations. Tim, if you would like to speak to the memo, please. Also, any board members, if you have comments on this item, happy to entertain those.
Yeah, the memo pretty much details everything. It's a little bit in the weeds, but I really appreciate. This was initiated by Treasurer Pichek, kind of saying, let's, we went through all this hard work a couple of years ago. Let's take a step back and really kind of take a look at it. It's not, we're so often focused on the issues of the day. It sometimes makes sense to step back and see how the issue of yesterday is panning out. And so it was actually a really fun exercise to do, to work with the actuaries, put all this together. We were in Senator Probst on Tuesday, and we have a little slide deck that accompanies this, and presented it at a very high level to the Appropriations Committee. And I think they really appreciated it, as that committee has turned over. One fun moment, Eric, that I think you will really appreciate is when Mike sat down to start his presentation, and say he's here to talk about pensions, all of a sudden the door opened and former Senator Kitchell popped in. And I think the joke was made that you say pensions 3 times and Senator Kitchell shows up. She just happened to be in the building, so it was very fortuitous timing. And but it also kind of was another reminder of all the work that we did before, and I think it was well received. And so we're going to continue to make it available and try and present it in layman's terms so that folks understand the value of the work that's come before and the importance of staying the course. I think if there's any message that came out of it, it's stay the course.
Thank you for providing that information into the discussion. It's good to take that step back and make sure everyone knows the benefits of staying the course. Any comments on any miscellaneous items before we move on to the final item on our agenda here? Well, I guess that captures any additional comments. Any other business to come before the board? Anyone want to put anything on the board's radar? Bruce, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Eric. I was just curious about the retirement division's efforts to find a third member for the medical review board, if we have any potential candidates to fill that vacancy.
No, it is a struggle, I have to say. So I wish I had more. If anyone knows someone, I don't like to have a thing all the time in the medical society's newsletter. I feel like the last time we did it was maybe 6 months ago, so probably useful to push through that channel again. A friend is the director there, so she lets us kind of do a blurb seeking folks from time to time. We did have Brianna, I think we had someone who was potentially interested, but I think their license had lapsed, so it wasn't a good candidate. As I recall, that was probably a couple months ago when we were hoping that one would pan out, but they didn't want to maintain a license. So that's where we are on that.
Oh,
Eric,
sorry,
you're
I was
muted.
on mute. Yep, it was my turn to do that. I saw Beth F's hand first, so please, the floor is yours.
And the requirement for that is a medical doctor or a nurse is it a nurse practitioner or no? Just it's a medical.
Brianna, do you remember offhand? I believe it's a medical doctor.
Yeah, it's a physician specifically.
Physician.
Physician. Okay.
Yeah.
My question is, what's the time commitment?
Not substantial. Brianna, what have we estimated? Like, somewhere in the 3 to 5 hours a month.
Yeah, and the bulk of the work is so I normally send the physicians information on cases 2 weeks ahead of the meeting. So the bulk of it is really just reviewing medical records prior to the meeting. Normally averages about 3 cases a meeting. So I would say probably like 3 to 4 hours a month. The meeting themselves are pretty quick, like 15, 20 minutes. So it's not a huge time commitment, but I think physicians are strapped for time in general anyway. And so trying to find that perfect person who has the time to commit to even something seemingly this kind of small has been very difficult. So yeah, if anybody has any leads, we are all ears.
Assuming the meetings are virtual.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're by teams, Thursday mornings.
Okay. And then we get our packet, do they get additional documentation? I'm assuming with more medical information there.
Yes.
Yes, so
Okay.
you just see the relevant stuff, but they get the full medical records to review.
So I have a couple of peers that I'll just reach out to, people that are my generation that might want to keep a toe in.
Yeah, that's great. Please do. The one requirement beyond being a physician is that they can't have an interest in the system. So I think that's the way it's phrased. So, no one who is a member or beneficiary or something like that. That's the statutory requirement.
Thank you for that question, Bruce. So any additional business to come before the board this month? Not seeing any. I think we might be at that time to entertain the motion to adjourn if anyone is so inclined.
Moved.
Motion from Gavin. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. A motion to adjourn is not debatable. So all those in favor, please signify with an aye.
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 All those opposed with a nay. That concludes our business this month. Thank you all.
Thank you, Eric. Be well, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye
folks.
now. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Enjoy the snow.